This is a developing story that raises profound questions about America's immigration system, human rights, and the allocation of billions in taxpayer dollars. Reports indicate that plans are underway to dramatically expand immigrant detention capacity through massive new facilities, some capable of holding thousands, while credible accounts detail overcrowding, medical neglect, and conditions that strain local communities and international standards. Tonight, we examine the facts, the controversies, and the human impact. Before we start, wherever you're watching or listening from, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. Today, we'll continue this conversation in the comments and respond to your questions. Good evening. This is Worldview. I'm your host, bringing you a measured look at one of the most pressing and divisive issues facing the nation: the ongoing expansion of immigration detention under the current administration. Recent disclosures from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement outline an ambitious and extraordinarily expensive initiative. The agency anticipates expending approximately $38.3 billion to acquire and repurpose industrial warehouses and other large structures into dedicated detention centers. These facilities would serve as regional processing hubs and larger-scale holding sites, with some designed to accommodate between 7,000 and 10,000 individuals at a time. The total projected capacity under this plan could approach or exceed 90,000 beds nationwide, representing a significant escalation from previous levels. This effort aligns with the administration's stated priority of carrying out large-scale deportations. Officials argue that expanded infrastructure is essential to manage what they describe as a necessary surge in arrests and processing. Without sufficient dedicated space, they contend, the system would continue relying on overcrowded local jails, county facilities, and temporary arrangements that often fall short of standards. Yet this blueprint has encountered unexpected resistance, not from traditional opponents, but from communities and lawmakers in several Republican-leaning states. Locations in Texas, Georgia, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Utah, Missouri, and Virginia have seen local pushback against proposals to convert warehouses or other buildings into detention operations. In some cases, the proposed facilities would dwarf the populations of nearby towns. For instance, plans for sites holding 8,500 or 10,000 people in communities of just a few thousand residents have raised alarms about overwhelming local infrastructure, including roads, water systems, emergency services, and schools. Lawmakers from these areas, including Republican figures, have voiced concerns that such rapid influxes could strain public resources without corresponding federal support. This resistance highlights a tension. While national policy emphasizes enforcement, local realities demand consideration of practical limits and community well-being. At the heart of the debate lies a fundamental question. Why invest in facilities capable of detaining tens of thousands for extended periods if the primary goal is swift deportation? Due process requirements under U.S. law mean that many individuals, particularly those seeking asylum or contesting removal, must await hearings before immigration judges. Backlogs in the immigration court system, compounded by insufficient judicial resources, often result in prolonged detention. Federal judges have, in numerous instances, ruled that certain detentions violate due process, with reports indicating thousands of cases where courts found prolonged holding without adequate justification or timely proceedings. Critics point to these judicial interventions as evidence of systemic issues. In some rulings, judges have described detentions as unlawful when individuals are held without prompt access to bond hearings, or when mandatory detention policies are applied overly broadly. This has led to releases in many habeas corpus petitions, even as the administration pursues policies designed to minimize such releases. Proponents of the expansion maintain that dedicated facilities represent an improvement over current practices. At present, ICE frequently contracts space in local prisons and jails, where conditions can be harsh, and mixing with the general criminal population raises safety concerns. Newer sites, they argue, could be purpose-built or retrofitted to better meet detention standards, providing separate accommodations, medical access, and oversight. However, accounts from existing facilities paint a far more troubling picture. Independent inspections, legal filings, and reports from advocacy organizations document persistent problems. Overcrowding leading to inadequate sanitation, limited access to clean water and nutritious food, and delays in medical treatment that have, in some cases, resulted in serious harm or death. Particularly alarming are reports concerning children and families. U.S. policy limits family detention in certain contexts, yet facilities like the one in Dilley, Texas, have seen significant populations, including young children. Families have described environments where medical complaints from minors are frequently dismissed or delayed. In one documented instance, an 18-month-old child required emergency hospitalization after weeks of untreated respiratory issues, with oxygen levels dropping dangerously low. Other accounts detail women experiencing severe hemorrhaging who were initially denied care, and detainees held for weeks or longer without adequate intervention for chronic conditions. These incidents raise serious questions about compliance with detention standards that mandate timely medical screening, emergency care, and ongoing treatment. Private operators such as Core Civic, which manages several large facilities, have issued statements emphasizing their commitment to health and safety, asserting that facilities undergo regular inspections and provide necessary services. Yet independent reviews and court documents often contradict these claims, citing failures in record-keeping, staffing shortages, and inadequate responses to urgent needs. The financial implications are equally stark. Billions are earmarked for acquisition and conversion, with examples of properties purchased at premiums far above recent market values. One reported transaction involved a warehouse bought for significantly more than its prior sale price just years earlier. Questions about transparency, potential conflicts of interest, and value for taxpayers persist, especially when contrasted with underfunding in areas like public education, healthcare access, and infrastructure maintenance. Beyond the immediate conditions, broader policy considerations emerge. A substantial portion of those in detention, by some estimates over half, have no criminal convictions beyond immigration violations. Many arrived seeking asylum or better opportunities, often fleeing violence or economic hardship. Detaining large numbers for months or years, particularly families with children, carries profound human costs: psychological trauma, disrupted education for minors, and family separations that can have lifelong effects. Economic analyses suggest immigration, including from undocumented sources, contributes positively to long-term growth through labor participation, tax contributions, and consumer spending. Industries such as agriculture rely heavily on such workers. Removing them en masse could disrupt food production and raise costs. Farmers and business owners have voiced concerns that blanket enforcement overlooks the contributions of long-term, law-abiding residents who support families and communities. The administration's approach emphasizes deterrence, creating conditions that discourage future arrivals and encourage self-deportation among those already present. Supporters argue this upholds the rule of law and addresses resource strains in border communities and certain towns experiencing rapid demographic changes. Opponents counter that deterrence through prolonged, harsh detention crosses ethical lines, potentially violating international human rights norms and domestic constitutional protections. They advocate for alternatives: expanded legal pathways, investment in immigration courts to reduce backlogs, community-based supervision for low-risk individuals, and targeted enforcement focused on serious criminal offenders rather than broad sweeps. Public opinion remains divided. Polls indicate support for secure borders and enforcement, yet also majority backing for pathways to citizenship for those without criminal records who have built lives here. The challenge lies in reconciling enforcement with humanity, efficiency with fairness. As this story unfolds, the nation confronts core questions. How do we secure borders while upholding due process? How do we allocate vast resources responsibly? And how do we ensure that policies do not inflict unnecessary suffering on vulnerable populations? We will continue monitoring developments, including any congressional oversight, judicial rulings, and statements from the Department of Homeland Security. Your thoughts matter. Share them below. This has been World View. Thank you for joining us. Good night.